All right. Well, wanted to start it out. I think we've been working together for almost a year now,
No, it's
and just
wild.
want to, yeah, I know, wild, right?
Yeah, and to think that I just signed up with you for this onboard, let's just kind of figure things out and look what it's turned into.
Totally, totally. Um, so let's start by, I'm actually curious, that just brought that to mind of like what first made you interested in like getting support, getting coaching? Like what was the thing that made you like, oh, I think I'm ready for a change or a shift of some sort?
I just was really overwhelmed with the business and how much it had grown, and I really needed some direction, and I didn't. I've always wondered about business managers and people that could help basically kind of channel you down specific pathways to stay organized and to work on things. And I think wearing so many hats, I was so stretched thin, and I was on burnout, and I couldn't keep operating like this. And I wanted to give my clients more, not attention, I guess, kind of like feel like I wanted to do more special things with the swim school, but I was so bogged down on the back end that, I knew that I needed to help on the back end in order to allow me to focus on the front end.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's also really common too, like a lot of people who are in your place, it's so hard. It's like that catch 22 because you're like, I have no time, but yet I don't have time to make systems to like free up more time. And you don't have time to be, creative. And I know that you wanted to even give like a higher level of service to the clients that you already had, but it's hard when you're just so caught in the day to day of like responding to every single person, putting out all the fires, all the things. So, I was actually thinking back on when we had first been chatting in the DMs and you were like, oh, I just need like help with, I think you said like, I need to clone myself or I need there to be just like more capacity for everything that I'm managing, which
Absolutely.
yeah, I just think that's so common and sometimes it's hard to make that initial jump
Mhm.
to even get the support because you're like, when am I going to find the time to do it? So, can you share a little bit more around like when we first started, what was the process like for you to start feeling like you were getting some of your time back and you had a little more capacity?
Well, I remember our first conversation or our first meeting that we had, and I remember talking about something that wasn't even on the radar of what really needed to be worked on. And I didn't even really know exactly how much help I did need. I knew that I was kind of floundering, but once we got into it, I went, wow, this, I think once we flushed it out and realized that I needed more help on the back end and we needed to get systems into place. And the word system wasn't even in my realm. And once we started doing a deep dive into the different systems to make the back end work so I can have the creative part on the front end, it it's kind of like opening a can of worms. I went, "Oh my gosh, I really need to put some things in order to feel like I'm functioning um in an organized way."
Yeah. And I also just want to name the fact that like this often happens is like once we get into someone's business, you're thinking, oh gosh, now there's like all these things I need to fix. And sometimes that can feel very overwhelming. So, can you share like what was the process like when you were like, oh gosh, now I know the areas that I really need to solve, but like all these things are coming up for me. How was the process even just like working with me as far as like continuing to move things forward and knowing what to focus on without just being like, this is way too much?
Well, what was great is that you said, okay, what is the number one bottleneck in your business right now? And the bottleneck, and that is what helped me really narrow it down to what I was really struggling with at the moment. And so it's kind of like like a paper with tasks on it, right? So we put up here like what is the highest thing that is holding you back that you're really struggling with that you could fix and then move on to the next. So that was really big that we kind of that we fleshed it out. And then once we solved that, we were able to move on to the next.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it was, you were able to help me organize my thoughts and more on a business side of thoughts and kind of hone in on, okay, let's come up with a few different options of how we want to fix this bottleneck. Here's A, B, and C. What works best for you? What do you think is best for your business? And then back and forth, done. So I think you took a lot of the noise out of my tangents of, oh, of being too worried about maybe like what the client was going to think or how it was going to affect my business, but actually it turned out what was better for the business in sense
Yeah.
of trying to find a solution.
Yeah. And I mean, as you mentioned, like you were wearing literally all the hats in your business. And so when you're doing that, it can feel like everything feels urgent and it's hard to know what really are your highest leverage moves because you're just feeling like this, you have to get back to people right away, or, there's all these things that you feel like need to happen yesterday. And so even just being able to zoom out and think, okay, where are we going? And
Yeah.
one thing that we really put in place too was more of like a quarterly planning system,
Mhm.
which I mean, kudos to you for building the business that you have for the last 5+ years and like figuring it out and making it happen. And one thing I often see is like as you build your business that way, sometimes we outgrow like our business outgrows the systems that we started it with, and then they're no longer working, but we
Mhm.
don't have the time or capacity to like upgrade the systems to match the level of capacity that we have as we grow our business, right? And so
Mhm.
I think for you, it was like figuring out, okay, what really needs to be put in place right away to free up more time. And then you were like, okay, I can hire someone to outsource this, and
Right.
let's make sure that that communication process
Yeah.
is really solid. And then instead of feeling like you're always running behind, now suddenly you're looking at things 3 months in advance and planning things like a lot more strategically. And yeah, of course, there's still going to be things that come up last
Right.
second, but
Of
you
course.
still have a much better plan. And even when it comes to like your social media and everything, it's less scrambled when you have a plan of, these are the main things that are coming up in the next few
Right.
months, and then it's easier to pass that stuff off.
Yeah, and I think what was or not I think, but I know what was really helpful is we kind of categorized all the different parts of the business and really tried to streamline those things together. You know, it was social media, it was maybe hiring an assistant, it was policies and procedures, which was a huge one, and communication from the parents, like note, texts, DMs, emails, and streamlining everything into one channel. So it doesn't, so you're basically, so like my brain wasn't thinking to check five different sources of communication from families or from inquiries or from businesses of just about different things. Same thing with social media. I can't do social media, and nor do I want to. I don't have the time to do it. So I think a big part of this too was realizing just because I'm a small business and I'm, one to two to three maybe employees tops, that you still can have people to help you. You can hire a manager, you can hire an assistant, not full time, but somebody just to take away a little bit. And I feel that what was scary for me is that I'm like, I'm just a little business. I can't hire these people and have them do, but in the end, yes, you can. So there was a lot of growth in the mindset of a business owner too, that you really helped me push through those walls in the ceiling to encourage me, you can do this, and here's how I can help you. And instead of just saying, oh yeah, go do this, it was, vetting people and you know learning how to look around and what you actually need. So I think that was a really big accomplishment that we did together that you really, pushed me pushed me, and I say pushed me, like really encouraged me to try, even though it was a little hard at first because I was like, I can't do this. So I do appreciate that part of the coaching and mentoring was to and being my cheerleader to say you can do these things and this is going to help your business, and it absolutely did.
Yeah, and I think that that is a hard thing for a lot of business owners is thinking like, oh, I need to be hitting this amount before I invest in any sort of support. And that's usually what keeps you stuck at that level. And so for you, it was like being able to think about your business differently and think about your time differently and how, every moment that you're stuck in all this admin is a moment that you can't be really spending like doing more high level tasks to ensure client retention or just like make the client experience incredible or be bringing in new clients on all these things that really grow your business. And when you're caught doing all those things that you don't like doing, they're draining, all the things like that is taking away from the growth. So it is like a little bit of a, you know it's a takes some time sometimes to make that transition into having more team in your business, but you did it. And now I feel like you are just in such a better place, not just in your business, but also just the time and the white space that you have on your calendar of being able
Right.
to do more with your family and not feel
Mm,
quite so stretched, even knowing that you have, like we had
right.
talked about, a change coming up in your business with one of your employees taking a leave, maternity leave, and how that's going to affect you. But now that we're planning everything in advance, it's a little easier for you to be like, okay, I know what kind of income is going to look like and where I can be like stepping up a little bit more here. And this
Right.
is something I'm going to like put off until later. So you're not trying to just take on twice as much when one of your employees is going to be gone.
Totally. And I think also when you talk to business owners who are also mothers trying to raise a family, and sports and extracurriculars and managing the house and just all the other things, it's really important to have somebody on the business end that you can talk to. As I called you my business therapist. I'm like, I need to talk to China. I need to, and that's really, it's a really cool thing to be able to rely on you as a coach, because I have so many other things on the outside, so I can come back to you and say, okay, this is really holding me down, holding me back with the business. What can we do here to try to make it a little bit easier on my back end so I can also give my family attention or more, and be able to feel like you can go on vacation for a week and and everything's not going to go.
Fall apart. Yeah. 100%.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's really great to see how much you have grown and shifted and just like how your business is just like running so much more smoothly now. I'm curious, what were the biggest shifts that you feel like you noticed, whether that was like for yourself internally, mindset perspective, just like the way that you think about things, and then also externally, things that maybe you put in place, or tangible like metrics or things that you've noticed.
I think the biggest was hiring an assistant and hiring a social media manager and hiring people to do things and letting go of that control. Just as somebody small, that you've worked so hard for a couple years to do, and to really trust that the jobs are going to get done. So I have seen doing that, that has opened up more time for me to do the creative things that I want to do with the swim school. Not necessarily in the water, but things on deck, and have parent appreciation week and Christmas parties and things like that, like all the fun stuff, because I know that I'm going to be I'm having the help on the other end. And years before that, I was just too tired to do those things. So I would say things like that have really, really been it's been such a joy to be able to focus on that end of the business.
Yeah. Yeah. And even just like making more time to, I know you have like your scholarship
Mhm.
program now that like you can put more time into something that you feel like is a way that you can give back to your community too, which is so important. So, I just, I think that's really important as we think of being able to hire and what's possible with growth is like it allows you to have more time with your family, to be able to give back to your community, to do those different things that
Right.
you know you want to do, that you value. And when you are maxed out, you just don't have the capacity to do that.
Right. And I'm not a very good delegator, and I that you helped me out a lot with that too was you have to ask for the help. You can't do it all yourself and just say, "Hey, if you're going to hire somebody to do something, then you actually use them." And that was the big thing was me really learning how to um initiate and engage and it's like and then when you open that door it's been a lot easier to hand things off that you can just go, okay, I know it's going to get done.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
that's
and even like just taking all the systems that you've had in your head, because it's like people are like, oh, I don't have a
right.
system. It's like you do have a system. Everyone's got a system for doing something. It just might not be like written down on paper, but basically taking everything from your head and being like, okay,
Mhm.
passing it off. This is the objective of what needs to happen, giving them some pointers, but then letting them like trusting them to be able to do that. And so it's great that
Right.
you have been able to do that and your business is definitely growing because of it.
Right.
So, what feels most unique, would you say, about like the way that I coach or the way that we kind of worked through the process?
I I think again, starting off together and getting to know each other and getting to know like really like the thick of my business and me trusting what you're saying and this is all in the beginning and just putting my trust into you and saying, okay, she's here for this reason. Like, let's not feel like I can't tell her anything because she's gonna laugh at like how disorganized like my office is or something because I've got papers here, papers there, or whatever. And moving past that and really just being vulnerable and being open and trying new things, I feel that was really what um, kind of shifted as far as my business mentality.
Yeah. Yeah, and I see this a lot where it's like front facing. It's like, okay, your business is successful and your clients love you and you have like your a ton of referrals and all the things. Like that happens a lot. But then secretly people are like, oh my gosh, like someone's gonna look in my office or, at my computer and they're gonna be like, she's a total mess, right?
Yeah.
But if you
And
never address it, you can't fix it. So
right.
just
But
being like
yeah,
transparent. Yeah.
so I think it was really a lot of back end organization and just you really you keeping me corralled. That's what it was. It was a lot of corralling, and because it was, I'd be talking about one thing we're working on, and then I'd be like, oh no, and but I need to work on this too. So when we started working through things, different other things going on would pop up, and so I feel that it was okay, write that down, and we're going to come back to that. And I was like, oh, did we talk about that? And we're like, oh, we did talk about that. Yes, thanks for bringing that up. So there was a lot of accountability, and you really paid attention to what was going on and things that I had maybe mentioned before, just like one-offs, but you came back to me and said, "Hey, you mentioned this," and so I would say, "You're right. Let's go work on that." So
Yeah.
that was really nice about it's been nice working with you with that, with just knowing that I can also, the communication platforms that we have, right? that has been like a big help too, because everything lies in one place instead of, text here or something, and I can go back and refer. And then, the follow-up and the documents and just like the crazy great organization that you have has kept me organized as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is like nice where if something comes up, like you have a situation with a team member, employee, something like that, that is a little more time sensitive, we can be just like going back and forth real quick there to make sure that you're not waiting until our next call and you feel supported to carry those like higher pressing issues forward.
Yeah. And that was one thing that I was really hesitant at first because I didn't want to bother you. I know you have a family and you have a life outside of your business as well, but it was one of those things that I knew that I could reach out if something was like seriously pressing, and I knew that I'd hear back from you. And that was really comforting too, knowing that as well. But know that but I tell, I told one of my employees, I said, the great thing is though, is I feel everybody takes the weekend off and really respects weekend time. And that I feel is a good part of this business because it reminds you that you have to take a break for yourself too as a business owner. And so even knowing that I couldn't talk to you over the weekend, if I needed to, I know you'd be there for me. But respecting that boundary, um, and it was nice because it was like business can wait, people can wait, it will be okay, and you need to take a break too. And
Mhm.
even though you've never like said that to me, that was something that I took. I'm like, you know what, it's Saturday morning. We're gonna go on a hike and we'll deal with this Sunday night, Monday morning.
Right, right. Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes it's even being able to see that modeled by other people and
Mhm.
realize, oh, okay, maybe I am being a little overly responsive with my clients and training them that I'm going to get back to them within the hour, whatever it is. And that's not necessarily how I want to run my business. So I
Mhm.
need to like break that habit of feeling like I have to respond to people 24/7 on the weekends, all the things. So,
And I have a girlfriend who just opened a great little business here in town, and she's dealing with that exact same thing that I used to deal with. I'm like, girl, you've got to get them on to one communication platform. You cannot live like this because, we were at a soccer tournament and she picks out her phone and she goes, you weren't kidding about the text messaging. And I said, girl, I told you.
yeah,
You need to streamline that and you need to respect your time because it's going to make you crazy. And
yeah,
until you switch over, then you realize how much time you're saving and how much more you can focus on, you could have been on your phone answering a client, and your kid goes and scores a goal and you missed it because you're on your, worried about answering a client that doesn't need to be seen until, you know, Thursday.
right, right. But it's a practice and it's like now you
Mhm.
can look back and say, oh my gosh, right? But when you're in it, you don't know another way.
Exactly.
So speaking of your friend, like if you were to talk to a friend just about our experience,
hmm
what do you feel like you would say around the experience that you had working with me as a coach, the results that you got?
exactly what we talked about. You don't realize what you need until you're in it, until you do a deep dive into it. You realize you need help and you don't know where to start. But the great thing is that, and I was completely lost. I remember like I remember thinking China must think I'm nuts because I didn't even know what I needed. I just was kind of like, yeah, I don't know. And so I think I would tell somebody you've just got to give it a shot. Think of three things that you really want to do for your business and go in there and talk, start with China and say, this is where my business is at. And these are the three things, like what do you see in your bottleneck? What's bottlenecking your business? And I learned that from you. And I would say, if you go into her, China will probably ask you the same thing. So maybe think about that and you guys can, lift off from there and you'll see how many more other doors it opens. and and go in with a goal. Like what do you want out of your business? What are you trying to achieve? And mine necessarily wasn't more clients. It was about the back end organization of running my business. And I feel like in order to have a great front end, you've got to be have it going on in the back end too.
Yeah. And I think, it's like you already had so many people coming in and your business was rolling and going good. But what was starting to happen was you're putting your personal life on the back burner, right?
Exactly.
And
Mhm.
you're like, okay, this isn't very sustainable for that much longer. So it's like being
Right.
able to up level the whole back end of how you're doing things so that it can match your capacity, and
Mhm.
even looking at potential to continue to grow and be strategic with, how you're bringing in revenue based on what's happening in your business, and if you have employees leaving or things like that. And that's something that we kind of got into once we were able to stabilize you. Then now we
Mhm.
can play with like, okay, what are other ways that we can continue to grow that feel sustainable for you?
Right. Yep. And I think that every business is unique. And even I would, when I was thinking business coach, I went, well, my business isn't big enough to have a business coach. So there was that. There was hesitation around that because I just went, I'm not, I don't operate a huge company and I don't operate a massive brick and mortar. So what do I need a business coach for? And then my the unique situation that I'm in with my pool, and not my pool, but the pool that I'm at, it's how can you grow a business when you don't even necessarily own the place? You rent the place, and what can you do with that? So it was really cool to learn how it doesn't matter how big or small you are. Everybody can use a business coach.
Yeah, and it's really just all about like setting up efficiency in your business. Like how do we make sure that you are the most efficient with your
Mhm.
time, that you are like really also clear on your
Right.
actions, and you're really intentional to make sure like if you're wanting growth in your business, what are
Hmm.
you doing for growth? If you're not, if you just are like, I just need to like up level and find sustainability, which is where you were, it's like, great, let's make sure that every day, every week, you are taking actions towards that, and you're not just getting caught in the day to day, which is so easy to do in business. But like
Mhm.
having someone to kind of pull you back out of like, this is what you said you wanted, and we're going to make sure that you are continuing to move forward towards
Yep.
that at a pace that's going to feel sustainable for you.
Right. And one of the big things too is that I feel like when everybody owns a business and operates a business, you want that next level. You want that high level of service and that high level of operation. And that was the one thing too that I felt that I am operating at a high level, but I wanted to feel the back end was operating on the high level to feel great about what was happening on the front end too, just like you said. So it said, well, how can we operate at a higher level? And again, it was getting systems in order, streamlining the business, hiring people. And, you don't have to hire people full time. You can hire somebody for a couple of hours just to take a little bit off the plate.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes it's like you don't know what you don't know. And so having someone who has been there and can kind of give you that bird's eye view can be really helpful for you to be like, oh, I didn't even realize that was possible.
Mm.
So,
Yeah.
question for you, was there anything that felt like unexpected or surprised you about kind of what we did together, or something that we did that you didn't expect to be as impactful as it was, that really supported you in creating a really steady, like smooth, streamlined back end with your systems?
Um, yeah, again, hiring, an assistant and hiring out people to help you with the business. Like I didn't see that coming at all, honestly. And I am so glad that I did. And I was so hesitant, I was hesitant for a couple of months, and it's one of the best decisions I made. And thanks to you, because you said, have you considered this before? And this is why you should consider it A, B, and C, D, and all the all the things. Um, So that was a really cool experience to have, and I definitely am so grateful for that portion of part working to streamline the business as well. I mean, I without these people, I still think I would just be floundering. And doesn't mean I still feel like I need 10 more of me. You know, I feel like it'll always be like that,
Yeah.
but I that was the surprising thing. And you know, I exactly, you don't know what you don't know, and that's something else to that I would say to another potential client is you don't know what you don't know. And when you have people to speak on your behalf, like me, I'm like so happy that I could be an advocate and support of you, because you know, I want my friends' businesses to grow. I want them to do well. And when, again, my girlfriend, another mom, you know, just that says you weren't kidding about this. And it's like, great, well, let's go see China.
Yes,
I
and
got
really,
somebody just in mind who can help you.
totally, totally. Well, it is such a pleasure. And I mean, I'm always like, just honestly feel very, very grateful for the the capacity of like the women who I do get to work with and like the caliber and the level of, business owners. And it's like I feel like it is so important to have more support so you are not just doing it all on your own and testing everything out on your own and being like, is this right and everything. And I do feel like it is such a pleasure for me to be able to work with women like you, to see you grow and see you not just grow in your business but also be able to just grow as a leader and grow in the way that like you're experiencing more joy and living your life more and just more excited about it all and more
Mhm.
excited about these new things that we can do in your business rather than an opportunity come up and you being like, oh, I don't even have the capacity for that, right? So, yeah, I just want to say thank you
Yeah, thank you.
for giving me the
Yeah,
pleasure of being able to work with you, and it
yeah,
is
it
an
was so
honor,
fun.
and I'm so grateful to be able to continue with you.
Yeah, me too. Thank you. And I'm excited, you know, to continue to work together. And I'm you know, these, like I said, the universe brings people together sometimes, and you came in right at the right time. I mean, I'm glad that, you know, social media has a crazy way of pulling people together. And so, you know, I'm grateful that for everything you've helped me with too, in trying to stay organized.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it is a skill in progress, right?
Yes, yes, always, always working.
Awesome. Well, thank you.